Have you ever noticed how peace always seems to slip through your fingers the very moment you try to grasp it? You tell yourself that once work slows down, once the relationship is secure, once the bank account is stable, then you'll finally rest. Yet every time one problem fades, another quietly takes its place. It feels as though life is a carousel of striving, clinging, and resisting. No matter how fast we run, peace remains one step ahead. This is not a uniquely modern dilemma. More than 2.500 years ago, the Buddha observed the same restlessness in the human heart. People were caught in endless cycles of desire and disappointment, grasping for permanence in a world that never stands still. His response was not to tell people to abandon life, but to see life more clearly. He offered a teaching so simple and yet so unsettling. What is meant for you will come, and what is not will fall away. At first hearing, this sounds like surrender, almost like giving up, but if you listen closely, it is not passivity at all, it is the art of detachment. Detachment does not mean you stop loving. It means you love without trying to cage the other person. Detachment does not mean you stop acting. It means you act without letting the outcome chain your heart. Detachment does not mean you withdraw from life. It means you enter life fully, but without the desperate need to bend it to your will. Think about it. How much of your daily anxiety comes not from what is happening, but from your story about what should be happening? We fight reality, as if our resistance could rewrite the moment. We cling to relationships that no longer serve us because we fear emptiness more than loneliness. We hold on to possessions as though they could protect us from time. We resist change as though standing still were an option. The Buddha saw all of this clearly and reminded us, peace is not something to be earned in the future. It is revealed the moment we stop struggling against the flow of life. But how do we do that in practice? How do we stop fighting when the world feels so uncertain? How do we learn to let go without collapsing into indifference? That is the journey we are going to take together today on Dharma Veins. Through ancient stories and timeless parables, we will see how monks, masters, and ordinary seekers discovered freedom not by controlling life, but by releasing their grip. You will hear of a broken cup that teaches impermanence, of a wild horse that shows us why judgments are premature, of a butterfly that reminds us why struggle is necessary, and of a glass of muddy water that reveals the power of meditation. Each story is more than a metaphor. It is a doorway into seeing your own life differently. And here is what makes this journey unique. After each story, I will give you one small action step, a simple practice you can apply the very same day. Because wisdom is useless if it remains a beautiful idea locked in books or temples. Real transformation comes when insight meets action, when you take a truth and live it. Breathe it, test it in your relationships, your work, your quiet moments alone. So I invite you to lean in, not just as a listener but as a participant. Notice where you feel resistance in your body. Pay attention to the thoughts that rise up as you hear these teachings. Some will comfort you, others may challenge your assumptions. Both are valuable. Both are signs that the Dharma is alive and speaking directly to your experience. Today is not about escaping your life, it is about seeing it more clearly. It is about remembering that peace is not found by rearranging the outside world, but by loosening the inner grip. The art of detachment is not a rejection of love, action, or joy. It is the very key that allows you to love more deeply, act more freely, and live more lightly. So let us begin this journey together. Let us walk through the teachings of the Buddha not as distant philosophy, but as living wisdom. And as we move through each story, remember, what is meant for you will always find you, and what is not meant for you is never yours to carry. 1. The cup already broken. Lesson on impermanence. The story of the porcelain cup is deceptively simple, yet it contains one of the most profound lessons in Buddhist philosophy: impermanence. When the master told the young monk, the cup was already broken from the beginning, he was not dismissing the pain of loss. Instead, he was pointing to a truth that our rational mind often resists. Everything we hold dear is already marked by change. From the moment something comes into existence, its eventual dissolution is built into its nature. The cup, the body, the relationships we treasure, all of them carry the seed of their own transformation and eventual disappearance. For most people, suffering arises because we cling to the illusion of permanence. We tell ourselves that the cup will always be there on the shelf, that the relationship will stay the same, that our health and youth are fixed. Yet life keeps reminding us otherwise. Things break, people leave, bodies age. The problem is not change itself, but our refusal to accept change as natural. We grieve not just because something ended, but because deep down we demanded that it shouldn't. Buddhism teaches that liberation begins the moment we look at the world as already broken. This is not pessimism, it is clarity. By acknowledging impermanence, we free ourselves from the constant anxiety of preservation. We learn to enjoy the cup while it exists, knowing it will one day shatter. We love people more deeply when we remember they are not ours to keep. We live more vividly when we stop pretending life is a contract of guarantees. Modern psychology echoes this insight. Much of human anxiety is tied to attachment and fear of loss. But when we recognize impermanence as the rule rather than the exception, the fear softens. Acceptance makes space for gratitude. Because what is fleeting suddenly becomes precious. Practical reflection. Take one thing you fear losing, perhaps your career, your health, or a treasured object. Ask yourself honestly, am I holding this out of love, or out of fear? If fear is the answer, experiment with loosening your grip. By doing so, you will discover that freedom does not come from holding tighter, but from learning how to let go gracefully. 2. Radical acceptance, facing life as it is. Radical acceptance in Buddhist thought is not about giving up, but about aligning perception with reality. When the disciple says, I suffer because life is not how I want it to be, he voices a universal complaint. Most of us live with an inner script, how people should behave, how events should unfold, how the world should treat us. Suffering deepens when life refuses to follow that script. The master's reply, you suffer because you resist what is, cuts to the heart of the problem. It is not reality itself that torments us, but our insistence that it must look different. To accept does not mean to approve or to enjoy every circumstance. Acceptance is simply the willingness to see what is present without denial or distortion. It is like standing before a wave. You cannot stop it with your hands, and shouting at it will not change its course. The wise response is to dive into it, let it carry you, and then rise again when the water settles. In daily life, this means recognizing that some events, like illness, rejection, or sudden change, are beyond our control. Fighting them drains energy. Acknowledging them allows us to respond with clarity. From a psychological perspective, radical acceptance reduces what clinicians call secondary suffering, the additional layer of pain created by resistance. The illness itself is one burden, the thought, this should not be happening, becomes a second, heavier one. Letting go of that inner protest does not erase the difficulty, but it strips away the unnecessary weight. Applied practically, this teaching invites us into small, deliberate acts of acceptance. Perhaps you acknowledge a colleague's irritating habit instead of replaying it with resentment. Perhaps you admit your own imperfection rather than covering it with shame. In each moment, the practice is the same. Ask, what can I accept today? With time, these daily acknowledgements train the mind to meet reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. And in that meeting, paradoxically, we discover freedom. 3. The monk and the wild horse, trusting the process. The parable of the monk and the wild horse illustrates the Buddhist view that our judgments of good and bad are often premature and limited. When the villagers celebrated the arrival of the horse, they labeled it fortune. When the son broke his leg, they labeled it misfortune. When the war spared the son because of that very injury, their judgment flipped again. The monk's calm reply, luck or misfortune, who knows, is a reminder that reality is far more complex than our immediate perceptions. Buddhism teaches that clinging to fixed interpretations blinds us to the larger unfolding of causes and conditions. What we call luck is often just the temporary convergence of factors. What we call misfortune may be the seed of future relief. Our view is narrow, tied to the moment. Life, however, operates across a web of interdependence that stretches beyond what we can see. To insist that we know the final meaning of an event is to confuse a single frame of the film for the entire story. Modern psychology echoes this lesson in the concept of cognitive reframing. Many experiences that initially trigger despair, losing a job, facing rejection, or enduring failure, later become turning points toward growth, resilience, or new opportunity. The Buddhist perspective adds an even deeper layer. Not only can the story change over time, but we are not in the position to know its full arc while still inside it. Humility in judgment creates space for trust. Trusting the process does not mean passivity. It means continuing to act wisely without rushing to declare outcomes as final. The monk does not stop living because the horse arrives. Nor does he collapse when misfortune strikes. He simply refuses to reduce life to simplistic labels. Practical reflection. Recall one moment in your past that felt disastrous but eventually revealed itself as a blessing. Write it down. Hold it as evidence that perhaps today's chaos is only the prologue to tomorrow's freedom. By loosening our grip on instant conclusions, we allow the deeper wisdom of life to unfold. 4. The butterfly struggling, the wisdom of patience. The image of the butterfly struggling in its cocoon captures a profound truth about growth and transformation. The man's attempt to help was born from compassion, yet his intervention prevented the butterfly from developing the strength it needed to fly. In Buddhist thought, this story resonates with the principle that suffering and difficulty are not merely obstacles but part of the natural path of maturation. Just as muscles strengthen through resistance, the human spirit develops resilience through challenge. Our modern culture, with its obsession for speed and convenience, often conditions us to expect immediate results, whether in healing, relationships, or spiritual progress, but the Dharma emphasizes gradual cultivation. Enlightenment itself is described as a path, not a single moment of achievement. The butterfly's struggle mirrors our own inner work, painful at times, slow, and often invisible from the outside, but essential for true strength. Impatience in practice can create subtle suffering. When we meditate and demand instant calm, we feel restless. When we enter relationships expecting quick resolution, we invite disappointment. Buddhism teaches us to respect the rhythm of cause and effect, to trust that transformation has its own timing. The cocoon cannot be opened prematurely. Karma unfolds when conditions ripen. To rush it is to sabotage the very outcome we desire. Psychology affirms this as well. Trauma recovery, for instance, cannot be rushed without risking deeper wounds. Physical rehabilitation requires controlled stress on the body to rebuild function. Similarly, spiritual patience allows the mind and heart to adapt and strengthen in sustainable ways. Practical reflection. Identify one domain where you are pushing for quick resolution, perhaps in your work, your healing, or your relationships. Instead of forcing, pause and breathe. Remind yourself, this too has its own rhythm. By embracing patience, you do not abandon progress. You allow growth to happen in the way nature has always intended, through steady, necessary struggle that eventually prepares the wings to fly. 5. The glass of muddy water, meditation and clarity. The metaphor of the muddy glass of water is one of the most vivid illustrations of how the mind works in Buddhist teaching. When the master shakes the glass, the water becomes clouded, obscuring its natural clarity, but when left undisturbed, the dirt gradually settles, revealing the transparency that was always there. The same is true of the human mind. In our modern age of relentless stimulation, constant notifications, conversations, and inner worries, the mind rarely rests. Thoughts swirl like shaken dirt, leaving us unable to see clearly. Meditation is the art of letting the sediment fall. Contrary to popular misunderstanding, it is not about forcibly stopping thought. The Buddha never taught us to annihilate the mind's movements. He taught us to observe them with patience and detachment. Thoughts, emotions, and sensations arise and pass away like clouds moving across the vast open sky. The sky is not harmed by their presence, nor does it need to push them away. It simply remains, boundless and unaffected. When we sit in meditation, we begin to notice this same quality in ourselves. Beneath the turbulence of restlessness, there is a deeper stillness that does not come and go. By resting in awareness, we stop identifying with each passing thought and begin to recognize the mind's natural clarity. This insight aligns directly with the Buddhist understanding of impermanence. Nothing, not even confusion, is permanent. Given space, it too dissolves. Scientific studies have confirmed what Buddhist practitioners have known for centuries: regular meditation reduces stress, lowers anxiety, improves concentration, and even strengthens the immune system. More importantly, It reshapes our relationship with our own thoughts. Instead of being dragged around by them, we learn to witness them. This witnessing is freedom. Practical reflection. Close your eyes for 3 minutes. Focus gently on the sensation of your breath entering and leaving your nostrils. When thoughts arise, as they will, do not resist. Simply watch them drift away, like clouds crossing the sky. In that moment, the muddy water of the mind begins to settle, and clarity emerges on its own. 6. The man hanging on a branch, letting go of control. The story of the man hanging desperately from a branch is a striking metaphor for how fear and control operate in our lives. Suspended over a cliff, he clings with all his strength, convinced that letting go means certain death. Yet just beneath him lies solid ground. His suffering does not come from reality itself, but from his mistaken belief about it. In Buddhist analysis, this reflects one of the deepest sources of dukkha, or suffering, attachment born of ignorance. We hold on because we imagine catastrophe, even when freedom is closer than we realize. Control is one of the most seductive illusions. We tell ourselves that if we manage every detail, our careers, our relationships, our future, we can avoid pain and guarantee happiness. But life refuses to be mastered in this way. Conditions change, people act unpredictably, and outcomes rarely match our plans. Buddhism teaches that the attempt to control what is uncontrollable is itself a form of bondage. The tighter we grip, the more exhaustion and anxiety we create. Letting go is not the same as apathy. It is the recognition that we can act wisely without demanding specific outcomes. Just as the archer releases the arrow without controlling the wind, we do our best, but we accept that the rest is beyond us. This shift requires trust in impermanence, trust in the unfolding of causes and conditions, and trust in our own capacity to adapt. Modern psychology mirrors this wisdom. Attempts to micromanage every aspect of life often lead to burnout and chronic stress. Studies show that individuals who cultivate flexibility, what researchers call psychological resilience, experience greater well-being. In essence, learning to let go of control makes us more capable, not less. Practical reflection. Experiment with one small act of surrender today. Resist the urge to check your phone immediately. Let someone else choose where to eat. Allow an unanswered email to wait a little longer. Observe what happens inside you. Notice the mixture of discomfort and relief. In that space, you may glimpse the truth. Freedom is not found in grasping, but in the quiet courage to release the branch. 7. The sack of stones, compassion and forgiveness. The image of a man carrying a sack of stones is a powerful expression of how resentment and unforgiven wounds weigh on the human spirit. Each stone represents a grievance, a memory of being wronged, or a refusal to release the past. The burden is not on the offender's shoulders, it is on the one who chooses to keep carrying it. In Buddhist psychology, this clinging to anger is understood as a form of self-inflicted suffering. Holding onto hatred is like gripping a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. The one who suffers the burn first is oneself. Compassion, therefore, is not a luxury or a sentimental ideal. It is a necessity for liberation. But Buddhism insists that compassion must begin with the self. Too often, we are harsher with ourselves than with others. We replay mistakes endlessly, demanding perfection, punishing ourselves for past failures. Yet a tree does not grow stronger by being struck. It grows when it is nourished. Likewise, transformation arises not from self-condemnation but from self-kindness. Forgiveness, whether directed inward or outward, is the act of setting down the sack of stones so that the journey can continue. This does not mean excusing harmful behavior or inviting further injury. Buddhist compassion is never naive. It is fully aware of human flaws but chooses to respond with understanding rather than hatred. The motivation is not to justify the other's action but to preserve our own peace. Neuroscience now supports this view, showing that practices of forgiveness and loving-kindness meditation reduce stress hormones and increase emotional resilience. In both ancient teaching and modern science, the lesson is clear. Anger corrodes the vessel that holds it. Practical reflection. Write down the name of someone who has hurt you. It may even be your own name. Hold it gently and whisper, "May you be at peace. May I be free." This simple act does not erase the past, but it loosens the weight of the sack. Over time, As more stones are released, the body feels lighter, and the heart discovers it can fly again. 8. Integrating the teachings, walking the path daily. Integration of Buddhist teachings is not achieved through sudden epiphanies but through steady repetition in daily life. Detachment, acceptance, trust, meditation, letting go, and compassion are not abstract ideals to admire from a distance. They are practices meant to be lived in ordinary moments. In Buddhist tradition, this is called bhavana, cultivation. Just as a field becomes fertile not through one rainfall but through continuous care. The mind becomes liberated through consistent attention to small acts of wisdom. To appreciate without possessing means to enjoy people and things without attempting to own or control them. A flower is most beautiful when left in the ground. Plucking it to preserve its beauty is the very act that ensures its decay. Acceptance before resistance reminds us to meet reality as it is before launching into judgment. This does not eliminate struggle, but it allows our actions to arise from clarity rather than denial. Trusting the process of life is a way of stepping back from narrow judgment. What seems like failure today may prepare conditions for tomorrow's freedom. Meditation for clarity functions as the anchor of this path. By sitting with the breath, we let the sediment of the mind settle so that insight can arise naturally. Releasing control is perhaps the most challenging. The human impulse is to grip tightly. But Buddhism shows us that freedom lies in letting go of outcomes we cannot dictate. And choosing compassion is the practice that binds the rest together. Without compassion, detachment can harden into indifference. With compassion, it becomes the most profound form of love. It is inevitable that we forget these principles. Some days anger will win, fear will dominate, or attachment will resurface. Yet Buddhism emphasizes not perfection but return. The discipline is in remembering, over and over, to come back to the path. Each return is itself a victory. Because it proves that wisdom is not lost, it is patiently waiting beneath the surface. Ready to be practiced again. Remember this. Detachment is never cold indifference. It is the most courageous form of freedom. To detach is to love fully without chains. To act wholeheartedly without fear of outcomes. To live lightly while trusting the natural rhythm of life. When we stop clutching so tightly, life does not shrink, it expands. Our hearts open, our minds soften, and peace no longer feels like a distant prize but like a presence available here and now. If this teaching has spoken to you, I encourage you not only to keep it in your mind but to test it in your life. Choose one place today to loosen your grip, on an expectation, on a resentment, or on the illusion of control. Notice how it feels when you breathe a little easier. When you give the world space to unfold. That small act of practice is how wisdom turns from words into living reality. And if these reflections resonate with you, I warmly invite you to join this growing community here on Dharma Veins. Subscribe to the channel, share these teachings with those who might need them, and walk with us as we continue exploring how ancient Buddhist wisdom can heal the wounds of modern life. Every video we create is a continuation of this dialogue between past and present. Tradition and lived experience, timeless truths and today's struggles. But beyond teachings and practices, there is something deeper I wish to leave you with tonight, a prayer. Around the world, countless beings are enduring immense suffering, natural disasters, wars, displacement, and loss. Entire communities are facing pain that words cannot contain. For them, may we extend the heart of the Buddha, the boundless wish that all beings be free from suffering and its causes. May those caught in storms and earthquakes find shelter. May those trapped in war zones find safety and compassion. May families torn apart by violence and loss discover healing. May every creature, human and non-human, feel the touch of peace. This is not only a prayer, it is also a reminder of our shared responsibility. The Buddha taught that compassion without action is incomplete. As we cultivate peace within, let us also extend kindness outward, in our families, our communities, and our world. Even small gestures, a gentle word, an act of generosity, a moment of listening, can ripple further than we imagine. Now, I would love to hear from you. Think back on your own journey. Right finger, have you ever experienced a moment that felt like a misfortune, yet later revealed itself as a hidden blessing? Your stories matter, because they remind all of us that life's surface judgments are never the full picture. By sharing, You may help another person recognize the hidden grace in their own struggle. So please, add your voice in the comments below. Together, let us keep practicing the art of letting go, the wisdom of acceptance, and the courage of compassion. And as always, may you remember this truth. What is meant for you will arrive in its time. And what is not meant for you will fall away. May all beings find peace. May you find the strength to release what weighs you down, and the trust to walk lightly into the unknown. The Buddha's light has never ceased to shine. It lives in every moment we choose freedom over fear, clarity over clinging, and love over resentment. Until our next journey together, walk gently, live wisely, and carry peace within you.